Welcome back, everybody. We're diving deep today into Asteroid 2024 YR4. You know, the one that's been all over the news lately? We've been digging through a whole bunch of recent articles, and let me tell you, some are really laying it on thick with that whole asteroid doomsday thing.
Right.
But fear not, dear listeners, because we're here to cut through the hype, Get to the real science, figure out what the actual risks are, and learn a bit about how we even keep tabs on these space rocks.
It's a fascinating look into how we as a species react to these potential threats from space. What are the odds? How do we prepare? All that.
Exactly. I mean, just for starters, this 2024 YR4 is a pretty big one, isn't it? It's like, picture the Empire State Building just cruising through space.
It's nearly a football field in length, to be precise.
Wow.
But it's important to remember, space is vast.
Right. Wow.
So statistically, the odds of an impact are still relatively low.
Okay, low but not zero. And the initial assessment, if I remember right, was like a 1.6% chance of hitting Earth on December 22nd, 2032, no less, which, just adds to the whole drama of it. But then I saw they updated it, and now it's up to 1.9%.
Yes.
I got to admit, that got my attention.
Right.
So what does that increase actually mean, practically speaking?
Well, it means it's moved up on the Torino impact hazard scale.
Oh, right.
From a level 2 to a level 3 out of 10. And level 3 is classified as a what they call a close encounter.
Okay.
It warrants attention from astronomers, sure, and even the public to some degree, but it's not, panic-inducing yet.
Attention, but no panic.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right.
But break it down for me a little more. Level 3. What does that actually mean compared to, say, a level 1 or like a level 10? I need a little refresher on this scale here.
Sure. So the Torino scale helps us categorize the risk posed by near-Earth objects, like asteroids. Level 1 essentially means everyone can breathe easy. Chances of an impact are pretty much zero.
Right.
But on the other end of the spectrum, a level 10, well, that means we're talking global catastrophe.
Oh, wow.
So a level 3 basically means scientists are paying close attention, but it's not at the stage where, governments would be planning evacuations or deflection missions or anything like that.
Okay. So more keep an eye on it than head for the hills.
Exactly.
But how easy is it to track this thing anyway? I read somewhere that its orbit makes it, a bit tricky to observe.
That's right. It has a highly elliptical orbit, meaning it comes quite close to the sun at times.
Oh, I see.
Which can make it difficult to observe for long stretches.
So it's like trying to track a, firefly buzzing around a spotlight.
Yeah, something like that.
Hasn't this kind of thing happened before, though? Where, like, the initial projections are all alarming, and then with more observation, they realize the risk was actually much lower.
Oh, absolutely. It happens quite often, actually. There was that asteroid, Apophis, back in 2004. Initially caused a lot of concern, it did. Projections gave it like a 2.7% chance of hitting us in 2029. But as scientists gathered more data, they were able to refine its trajectory. Determined it posed no real threat after all.
Oh, okay. That's somewhat reassuring, I guess.
Yeah.
But let's play what if for a second. Say, hypothetically, 2024 YR4 does end up on a collision course with Earth.
Right.
What are we talking about in terms of damage? I keep seeing that phrase city killer, but what does that really mean?
It means that an impact from 2024 YR4 would have the potential to, well, wipe out a major metropolitan area.
Okay, wow. Now you've got my attention. Paint me a picture here. What would that actually look like?
Well, imagine the 1908 Tunguska event in Siberia.
Okay.
A much smaller object, likely a fragment of an asteroid or comet, exploded in the atmosphere, flattened over 80 million trees across 770 square miles.
80 million trees. Wow, that's incredible. So 2024 YR4, how would it compare to something like that?
Well, this object is considerably larger, and if it were to enter Earth's atmosphere, the energy release would be equivalent to roughly 8 megatons of TNT.
8 megatons.
That's over 500 times the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
500 times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd say that qualifies as a city killer. And I imagine the impact would be pretty different depending on whether it hit land or water, right?
Absolutely. An impact over land would obviously result in widespread devastation in the immediate area, whereas an impact over the ocean could trigger massive tsunamis, especially if it happened near a coastline.
Right. Okay. Starting to feel a little apocalyptic here.
Yeah.
But didn't NASA recently complete a mission where they, successfully nudged an asteroid off course?
Yeah.
Doesn't that offer some hope?
You're referring to the 2022 DART mission. And yes, it was a major breakthrough in planetary defense, for sure. They essentially used a spacecraft as what we call a kinetic impactor.
Oh, right, like a high-tech battering ram, basically.
So exactly, and they were able to alter the trajectory of a small asteroid.
So we're not totally defenseless if 2024 YR4 turns out to be a threat?
No, not at all. And time really is our biggest ally here. Having years to prepare gives us a lot more options. We can refine strategies like that kinetic impactor, explore other technologies like using lasers or even a gravity tracker.
Or a gravity tractor. That sounds like something out of Star Wars. How would that even work?
Well, the idea is to use a spacecraft's own gravitational pull to very gradually shift the asteroid's path. It's a slow process, but it could be a viable option, especially for smaller asteroids. And really, this is a field that's constantly evolving. New technologies and strategies are being researched and developed all the time.
So what I'm hearing is there is a risk. It's still statistically low, and we do have some potential tools to deal with it, especially with enough time to prepare. But let's zoom out for a minute and talk big picture. If we did discover an asteroid on a collision course, who makes the decisions? Like, how do countries even begin to cooperate on something this massive?
That's where things get really interesting and challenging. You're talking about unprecedented levels of international collaboration, coordination, resource sharing. We'd need to develop global protocols for decision-making, risk assessment, action plans, all sorts of things.
It sounds like a logistical and political nightmare.
It would be incredibly complex, no doubt, but I also believe it's an opportunity for humanity to, come together, demonstrate our capacity for collective action in the face of a common threat.
It's like almost ironic. A potential global catastrophe is a catalyst for global unity. But I got to admit, the cynic in me wonders if we're even capable of that kind of cooperation. I mean, look at how we've handled climate change. There's still so much division and disagreement.
Yeah, it's a very valid point. There's no guarantee we would rise to the occasion, for sure. But I think the nature of an asteroid threat, its immediacy, its existential stakes, I think that could galvanize action in a way that other global challenges haven't. It forces us to confront a very fundamental truth. We are all interconnected, sharing this one planet. Our fate is intertwined.
You're right. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, all our little differences do seem pretty insignificant when you're talking about the potential destruction of, well, everything.
Exactly. And maybe that's the silver lining in all this. It's a cosmic wake-up call, Reminds us what truly matters, our shared humanity and the preciousness of life on Earth.
That's a powerful thought. But how do we translate that into concrete action? How do we move from just awareness to actual preparedness?
Well, I think it starts with education. Fostering scientific literacy, critical thinking. It's about engaging the public in these conversations, encouraging them to think long-term, and demanding that their leaders prioritize planetary defense alongside other global challenges.
So it's not just about, building bigger telescopes or designing better spacecraft. It's about changing our mindset, our whole perspective, recognizing that our future is, inextricably linked to the cosmos.
Precisely. And maybe, just maybe, in confronting the threat of a city-killer asteroid, we'll discover something even more profound. The capacity for humanity to come together and safeguard its future, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come.
Wow. That's quite a thought. It's both humbling and inspiring at the same time. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about 2024 YR4 specifically, the potential consequences of an impact, and the whole fascinating, albeit slightly daunting, world of planetary defense. But what about the bigger question? How do we as individuals contribute to this effort? What can we actually do besides, looking up at the sky and hoping for the best?
It's a conversation we need to be having, really, as a global society, I mean.
Yeah.
We're so used to dealing with those immediate threats.
Right.
But an asteroid impact, especially one with the kind of destructive potential we're talking about with 2024 YR4.
Right.
It makes you think long-term, grapple with some really big questions.
Absolutely. Almost like a sci-fi thought experiment, but in real life. But let's go back to 2024 YR4 for a minute.
Yeah.
You mentioned it could wipe out a major city.
Potentially, yes.
For someone who's never really thought about, the specifics of an asteroid impact, what would that actually look like?
Well, the immediate effects would be unlike anything we've ever seen. First, you'd have this intense heat blast as the asteroid enters the atmosphere.
Oh, wow.
Hot enough to ignite fires across a huge area.
I see.
And then comes the shock wave from the impact itself.
Right.
Which could level buildings for miles around.
So we're talking instant infernos, buildings collapsing.
Exactly.
Sounds like a disaster movie.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning. The impact would throw millions of tons of debris up into the atmosphere.
Oh,
Some of it's superheated, potentially sparking even more wildfires, further away from the impact zone.
Wow.
And then there's the dust cloud.
Yeah, the dust cloud, that's got to have, like, global consequences, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A dust cloud that massive.
Yeah.
It could block out the sun for months, maybe even years.
Yeah.
You'd have disruption to agriculture, dramatic temperature drops.
Right.
It could trigger a whole cascade of environmental effects that would impact the entire planet. I mean, we're talking about a potential mass extinction event, really.
Okay. It's hard to even wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
But this DART mission, this kinetic impactor idea, does that give us any real hope of preventing something like that from happening?
DART was a crucial first step, for sure. It showed us that we can, in fact, change the course of an asteroid.
Right.
But it was just a test, really, a proof of concept.
Yeah.
To deal with an asteroid the size of 2024 YR4, we'd need to scale up our efforts significantly.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what else is on the table besides these kinetic impactors?
Well, there are a few other approaches being explored. Some scientists are looking at using powerful lasers to actually vaporize part of the asteroid's surface.
Oh, wow.
The idea is to create this jet of gas that could then push it off course.
I see.
Others are investigating that gravity tractor concept we talked about.
Right.
Using a spacecraft's gravitational pull to slowly but surely alter the asteroid's trajectory.
So it's a mix of, like, brute force and subtle nudging.
Yeah, exactly. But let's shift gears for a second, talk about the bigger picture.
Okay.
If we were to discover an asteroid on a collision course who actually makes the decisions about what to do, how do countries even begin to cooperate on something of this scale?
Right, yeah. That's a good question.
You're talking about an unprecedented level of international collaboration,
Yeah.
coordination, resource sharing. We'd need global protocols for decision-making, risk assessment, action plans.
Right. Sounds incredibly complicated.
It would be incredibly complex. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's also an opportunity, for humanity to come together, really demonstrate our capacity for collective action in the face of a common threat.
Yeah. It's almost like it's ironic.
It is, kind of.
That a potential global catastrophe could be the thing that brings us all together.
It could be a catalyst for global unity.
But I have to say, the cynic in me wonders if we're even capable of that kind of cooperation.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how we've handled climate change. There's still so much division and disagreement.
You raise a valid point. Absolutely. There's no guarantee we would rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
But I think the very nature of an asteroid threat, its immediacy, its existential stakes.
Yeah.
It could really galvanize action in a way that other global challenges haven't. I think it forces us to confront a very fundamental truth, that we are all interconnected, sharing this one planet. Our fate is intertwined.
You're right. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, our differences do seem pretty insignificant when you're talking about the potential destruction of, well, everything.
Exactly. And maybe that's the silver lining in all of this.
Yeah.
It's a cosmic wake-up call, reminding us what truly matters. Our shared humanity, the preciousness of life on Earth.
That's a powerful thought. But how do we translate that into concrete action? How do we move from just awareness to actual preparedness?
Well, I think it starts with education, fostering scientific literacy, critical thinking, engaging the public in these conversations, encouraging them to think long-term, and demanding that their leaders prioritize planetary defense, alongside other global challenges.
So it's not just about, like you said, building bigger telescopes, designing better spacecraft. It's about changing our whole mindset, broadening our perspective, recognizing that our future is, well, inextricably linked to the cosmos.
Precisely. And maybe, just maybe, in confronting this threat, this city-killer asteroid, maybe we'll discover something even more profound. The capacity for humanity to come together and safeguard its future, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come.
What a thought. It's both humbling and inspiring at the same time. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about 2024 YR4 specifically, the potential consequences of an impact, and the whole Fascinating, if slightly daunting, world of planetary defense. But what about the bigger question? How can we, as individuals, contribute to this effort? What can we actually do besides, looking up at the sky and hoping for the best?
That's a great question. It's something we all need to be thinking about. Planetary defense, I mean. It's not just the responsibility of, scientists and governments. It's a collective effort. We all need to participate.
Okay, so what can we do? Where do we even begin?
For starters, just stay informed. Follow the news about asteroid discoveries, planetary defense initiatives, all that.
Right.
Support organizations that are working on this issue, whether it's donations or volunteering your time.
Yeah.
And, talk about it. Engage in conversations about the risks, the potential solutions,
Wow.
not just with, your friends and family, but with your elected officials as well.
Right. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Exactly.
But beyond just staying informed, are there any other concrete actions we can take?
Absolutely. Encourage STEM education in your communities.
Okay.
Support research efforts. Advocate for increased funding for these planetary defense programs. These are investments in our future, really, in our ability to protect ourselves from these cosmic threats.
I like that. Framing it as an investment, it's easy to kind of dismiss something like asteroid defense as, a far-off problem.
Yeah.
But the more we learn about the history of our planet, the more you realize it's not a matter of if, but when we'll face a significant impact event.
Exactly. And the more prepared we are, the better our chances of survival. Think of it this way. We buy insurance for our homes, our cars, our health. Why not invest in, planetary insurance, so to speak?
That's a great analogy. Planetary insurance. I might have to steal that one.
Go for it.
But seriously, this conversation has really shifted my perspective. I'm realizing planetary defense isn't just about science and technology. It's about our values, our priorities, our responsibility as stewards of this planet.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about recognizing our place in the cosmos, understanding the forces that shape our world,
Yes.
and taking responsibility for our own destiny. And that's a message that needs to resonate with, well, everyone, really, not just scientists and policymakers.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Asteroid 2024 YR4, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I hope they'll come away with a sense of awe and responsibility. Awe at the vastness of the universe we inhabit, its power, and responsibility for, well, safeguarding this pale blue dot, protecting it from those occasional cosmic curveballs.
Right.
And maybe, just maybe, in facing those challenges together, we'll discover a deeper connection to each other, to this planet, to this incredible journey of life itself.
Beautifully put. And on that note, we want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and sometimes thought-provoking world of asteroids and planetary defense. Remember, keep looking up, stay curious, and never stop exploring the wonders and mysteries of our incredible universe.